And we're back for another Gab with Abigail. If you aren't back and this is your first time on my channel, hi, welcome to Gabs with Abigail, where we talk about the Bates and Duggars and other D-list fundies. In today's video, we are reacting to the OG Megyn Kelly video from when the first Josh scandal broke out. I've been meaning to do this for a minute, and I feel like since we're about to get Jill's testimony, let's look at the first thing that, according to her parents, she had to say. But as you can see, my mic is still coming. So actually I had ordered one, and then I went home for Thanksgiving and somebody stole it off my porch. So let's hope I'm going to be able to get the return for that money, you bum bitch who stole it. Let's get into the video.
It is a story that has generated hundreds of thousands of headlines and plenty of criticism. Tonight, for the very first time, the family that became famous for their conservative Christian values and their 19 children speak out about a painful secret involving their oldest son and the actions that he now admits were inexcusable. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Just hours ago in Arkansas, I sat down with...
So do you guys think that, like, they'll do another interview? If they do another interview, they could use this exact same opening by Megyn Kelly.
I sat down with members of the Duggar family, stars of the hit TLC show 19 Kids and Counting. We discussed the serious allegations of inappropriate touching some 12 years ago by a then teenaged Josh Duggar. Some of the topics we will discuss tonight are troubling and not intended for younger viewers. But first, a look at how we got here.
This is the story of my family. We're the Duggars.
The Duggars, a clean-cut family of 21, 10 boys, 9 girls, who from the outside looking in seemed to live a charmed and sheltered life. The kids, homeschooled, reliable, responsible.
To keep things together with our mega family, we're each in charge of certain areas.
Joseph takes out the trash. Josiah, he organizes and straightens the pantry.
Self-sufficient, extremely well-behaved. The family first rose to prominence in Arkansas, where in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Jim Bob Duggar served in the state's House of Representatives. But it was in 2004 that the Duggars gained national notoriety.
If you lost count, allow us to help.
First with documentaries about their unusually large family.
We're the Duggar family.
And later with a hit series on TLC that today is known as 19 Kids and Counting. The show would focus on the Duggars' ever-expanding family, their devout faith, traditional values, and strict courting rules. The program was an enormous hit, drawing millions of devoted viewers. But with celebrity came controversy, criticism of what some view as their more controversial opinions, from their views on abortion.
There's a baby Holocaust taking place, where doctors and nurses are being paid to take the lives of innocent, unborn children.
To those on gay marriage.
What's really at stake here is the American family. Marriage is central to the family, and every single child deserves a mother and father. Child deserves a mother and father.
Mind you, this is before the cheating scandal came out. He would get on camera and say these things, like, bold, like that was the first sign that this boy was not going to do better. Like, he would get on camera and lie. Why would you lie like that on camera, my love? Of all the places that you could lie on camera, like they got you in 4K. Insane. Mind you, and then the family's not going to break up. This is exactly why Anna's not going to leave. Break up the family for what? Though he's going to do that by going to prison. Every house needs a father and a mother in it. You're going to jail!
Or emphasis that women should submit to their husbands. Their detractors even starting a petition demanding that their show be canceled, accusing the family of gay fear-mongering. Despite it all, the show's ratings continued to soar. The 2014 wedding of daughter Jill Duggar drawing more than 4.4 million viewers, the network's biggest telecast in 4 years. And then, a bombshell. May 19th, 2015. In Touch Weekly reports the Duggars' 27-year-old son Josh had been named in a prior sexual abuse investigation. 2 days later, on May 21st, the magazine reprints what turned out to be an illegally released police report. It reveals that Josh, while 14 or 15 years old, forcibly touched at least 5 girls in 2002 and 2003. The report makes clear the victims include Josh's younger sisters. The Duggars consulted church elders. They sent Josh to a kind of rehab program and reported him to a state trooper who was an acquaintance of the family. However, no formal investigation was launched until police received an anonymous tip in 2006. By that time, the statute of limitations had run and no charges were filed. The day of the second In Touch report, Josh Duggar issues an apology, writing in part, 12 years ago, as a young teenager, I acted inexcusably, for which I am extremely sorry and deeply regret. I hurt others, including my family and close friends. His parents and wife of 6 years also issue statements. Wife Anna saying Josh told her about his past before they got engaged, that she was shocked, but that he had gotten help, humbled himself before God, and changed the direction of his life.
Change the direction of his life. Yeah, straight to prison. That's mean. I'm sorry. This is a real person with real kids and real family. Jail is terrible. It's not a funny place. But you changed the direction all right.
So why would a family with such a painful secret launch a reality TV show? And was it hypocritical to preach family values knowing of their own son's repeated sins? I asked them that and much more in our Duggar family interview right now.
Take us back to 2002. How did you first learn that there was a problem with Josh?
Well, 12 years ago, we went through one of the most darkest times that our family's ever gone through. And our son Josh came to us on his own, and he was crying, and he had just turned 14, and he said that he had actually improperly touched some of our daughters. And it was...
We were shocked. I mean, we were just devastated. I don't think any parent is prepared for trauma like that. And I think we had one ray of hope in that Josh had a tender conscience, and he was the one that came and shared on his own, even though the others really didn't know anything of his wrongdoing.
This is a young boy who has come to you with shocking information. What did he say? I mean, how did you respond to him? What was that like, that exchange?
There was so much grief in our hearts. I think as parents, we felt, we're failures. You know, here we tried to raise our kids to do what's right, to know what's right. And yet, one of our children made some really bad choices. And I think as a parent, we were devastated.
Did he explain why? I mean, was that a question that you asked?
He said he was just curious about girls, and he had gone in and just basically touched them over their clothes while they were asleep, and they didn't even know he had done it. Mm-hmm. And so we went, and the first thing was to protect the girls, and so we went in. But anyway,
how many girls were we talking about?
We had 5 girls at the time.
Okay.
And so, but anyway, he went in and said he had done this, and so we, first off, of course, really talked to him, and then we went and talked to all the girls and the children.
It was so important for us as parents to talk to our girls and make sure that nothing else had happened. And so
what did they say?
Well, one by one, as we talked with them, none of them were aware of Josh's wrongdoings.
So they learned about it from you?
Yeah.
Yes.
How, at that point, he had said that he had done this to how many of the girls?
That was to 2.
Okay. And so, but neither one had any recollection of it?
They did not know.
And what was their reaction when they learned it from you?
They really didn't know. And actually what happened was we asked them at first if anything happened, and then it was after some other things happened that we actually shared with them. And we took a lot of steps. And first we tried to deal with this in-house as parents. We were in shock, and we were trying to figure out what was the next step. But really, looking back, we did the best we could under the circumstances.
You're saying, what am I going to do? You're saying, he says he's touched 2 of the daughters, and you don't know what to do, right?
We didn't know, because at that point now, nobody knew about it, and besides Michelle and I and Josh. And so we thought, what do we do with this information? And the girls, we talked to them, and they didn't know that anything had happened because they were asleep. And so we talked to him. We put all kinds of punishments on him. We watched him like all the time. I took him to work with me, and we just poured our life into him.
And like, even just that language, we poured our life into him. The volumes that speaks.
He's 14, he's having this problem. What's going to happen when we go to sleep?
Right. Nothing ever happened like that again in the girls' bedrooms after that. Okay, so we had safeguards that protected them from that. But there was another incident where, 2 different incidents where girls were like laying on the couch, and he had touched like over the couch and actually touched their breast while they were asleep. And so, over the clothes. And so it was a very difficult situation.
I never noticed that, and I've watched this interview like at least 3 or 4 other times randomly throughout the years, because this is now a video that is over 6.5 years old. But I never noticed during this part that Michelle is like echoing his words back to him, like kind of like coaching him, but also like you can tell that they practiced these answers together. She's gonna stick beside him.
But as we've talked to other parents and different ones since then, a lot of families...
I'm also kind of uncomfortable with how her mouth is just hanging open in this scene. Like, thanks, babe.
...have said that they've had similar things happen in their families. For us, of course, this is public shame that our son did this back 12, 13 years ago.
And when you heard that the behavior had resumed, describe what that was like for you.
We thought, at first that Josh, was on the road to mend, at first, but he was still a kid, and he was still a juvenile. He wasn't an adult. And so there was a couple more times that he came and told us what he had done, and we were just devastated. Now, all these, again, this was not rape or anything like that. This was like touching somebody over their clothes. There were a couple incidents where he touched them under their clothes, but it was like a few seconds, and then he came to us and was crying and told us what happened, and it was after that 3rd time he came to us is where we really felt like, you know what?
How dare he say this and go on stage and say he doesn't remember what Josh said? Like, this in 4K, bro. You signed up for this. Like, I'm sure the fucking Megyn Kelly show Fox paid them for this shit. Miss me with that, Jim Bob Duggar. My God. Disgusting. I'm sorry. Like, if you felt like you didn't want to be honest about this, like this wasn't something you wanted to discuss, then you didn't have to discuss it. I like you like to lie like that. Like I said, because we know now from other evidence, from other people who told the truth, who seem to have a better memory. But I can understand if I had 20 kids, maybe I wouldn't be able to remember a lot of things too. That's a lot of birthdays and socials to keep up with. That's what I would have said in court. Like, look, bro, I got a lot of kids. I got a lot of things I'm supposed to be remembering. I don't remember this, Josh. It's not funny, but it's not funny. Like, it's not funny. Like, just terrible. Just absolutely terrible.
Everything we can as parents to handle this in-house, we need to get help. And that's actually when we went to outside folks, and we asked some very close friends if they could come over. And some of my best friends came over. We talked about it. And so at that point, we pulled Josh out of the home. Or
go for the counseling at the very first time he came to you?
I talked to somebody that worked at one of those juvenile youth sex offender facilities, and he described how they actually take care of these situations down there, and the success rate is not very good. And so we felt like that going from a perspective of really reaching his heart first would be important, and so that's the reason we sent him down to Little Rock to work with this man.
Did
and
legal
really
ever pop into your mind? Like, we may have
parents,
legal obligations?
You know what? As parents, you're not mandatory reporters. The law allows for parents to do what they think is best for their child. And so we got him out of the home, and we sent him.
She said, should you have gone to the law? We're the parents. We know what the fuck to do.
Down to this place. And that was really probably the best decision that we made through this whole process, because it was at that place. This is the first time Josh had ever been out of the home.
Mm-hmm. He's 15 at this point.
He just turned 15. And it was at that point that he came to the end of himself. And God really worked in his life. And matter of fact, he broke. And he went and asked God to forgive him. He went back and asked those that he had offended to forgive him. But we felt like the last jurisdiction of who he needed to make things right with was the law.
And we're going to get to that in 1 second. The subsequent incidents after the first one involved daughters who were awake, or at least a couple of them.
There was a couple, yeah,
so
and they didn't really understand though.
Yeah, what
happened, because we wouldn't talk to him.
It was more of his heart, his intent. He knew that it was wrong, but in theirs, they weren't even aware. It was like, it wasn't to them. They didn't probably even understand that it was improper touch.
I know that the ultimate one.
To them, they probably didn't understand that it was an improper touch. And I don't want to say that other parents wouldn't feel that same way. That, the kids didn't know, and that this isn't stuff that they're supposed to know, so that's why they didn't know, keeping them innocent. And why it's important, like that Jill is doing that whole, she posted that, teaching about her kids the proper names for their body parts, because it's true, right? That kids need to know that, so they have the language to understand when somebody's been inappropriate with them. Like, they should have been able to tell on Josh. And what's even worse is that if you're saying that his behaviors weren't different and weren't escalating, if you told them the first time that this happened what he was doing and that it was inappropriate, why wouldn't they be knowing it these other additional times afterwards that happened? So somewhere you're lying.
We got help, involved a very young daughter, and I'll avoid the age because I don't want to identify anyone specifically, but a single digit. I mean, what was that like for you to hear? You must have thought for some time, this is a pubescent boy, I don't know what he's going through, but he's testing. But when it moves to a young daughter.
Right. At that.
And here we are, 6 years later from this interview. Here we are 17 years later from when these incidents were happening. So let's see what Jim Bob had to say about this. Because he got up on, let's see what Jim Bob has to say about this.
At that point, that's when we pulled him out of the house and we said, he can't be here. And so we pulled him out, and then he went through.
Oh, it was at that point? It was at that point when you realized he was touching the 5-year-old sister. Before then, I mean, if that hadn't happened, I just can't. Oh, it was different when the girls were a little bit older. It was like, oh, you can kind of understand that. Okay.
That working with that man.
Yeah,
and
so he goes
really,
to the counseling.
Yes.
And then when he was done with the counseling, and this is not like a licensed therapist. It's somebody, a Christian-based,
but I tell you what,
treatment facility.
It really had a huge impact on his life, and that was the turning point in his life. And this man really reached his heart. And
before Josh went away, in the period where the girls knew, and he knew, and you knew, when you're living in the house together. What was that like? I mean, what was the dinner table like?
Well, we tried to make things as normal as we can, but also, Michelle and I both were keeping an eye on Josh, all the time, and watching his behaviors, watching his attitudes.
And prior to him leaving, Were you concerned for the safety of your daughters?
Well, we definitely put safeguards in our home.
Yes, and we also talked to our daughters and reminded them about wrong and right touch, and about if anybody ever touched you in a wrong way, for you to come and tell your mom.
Immediately, we tell them that you have a safe place to share your heart. And so we were trying to protect and watch and make sure that their hearts were safe, they had a safe place to talk, and at the same time putting boundaries and safeguards up in our home.
Yeah, we weren't going to give up on Josh.
Did it feel at all like a Sophie's choice? You know, I have to protect my daughters at the expense of my son, or vice versa?
I think it was a situation where...
Now, why would they make that reference to them?
We felt like our son's heart had gone astray. I think Jesus shared a story about he had 100 sheep and one...
I think Jesus had a story. So how much are you in this Bible, Jim Bob? No wonder. You've been in the church for how long? You've been to how many Bible studies? You've been leading how many churches? You said, I think Jesus has a story? Come on now.
One went astray, and there he was. He took care of the 99, but he also went after the one that went astray. And so as parents, we still love Josh, and we loved our other ones, but we're going to protect those that are in our hands, but also we're going to make sure that Josh doesn't make any wrong choices.
It doesn't mean that you're not a good shepherd. Jesus is a good shepherd, but he went after that one that went astray. And so I think as parents, we were trying to do the best that we knew how to help this one and protect these. And I feel like through that, as we came to that point where, Josh shared of, improperly touching the young one, we were devastated, and we said, we've got to send him out of the home. He has got to go and seek counsel and get help.
Did you feel?
And it was like that evening when they left and took him.
That same night.
That same day.
We took him out.
He just was weeping and shared immediately what he'd done. And so we were weeping, and the little one was like, what's wrong? Why is Daddy and Josh leaving? And as we're all weeping the next day, and for days and days, I was saying, Josh has done some very bad things, and he's very sorry.
Yes, but I was thankful. The ray of hope was that Josh had came and told us, and then his heart was still...
I hope this is because of the bad quality, because I'm squinting like, babe, is there a tear?
Soft, because we wouldn't have known about any of these things if he hadn't came and told us.
All of it you learned from Josh.
Like they said it right there in 4K. This isn't 4K, obviously, but like on camera. That we had to hear it from Josh first. And then so you heard only Josh's side of the story. Like, I know they said that they asked the kids, but they never told them what he did. And in many ways, he had complete control over saying what it is that he really, in fact, did. And they've continued to protect and allow him to make that choice for years, to lie. And it's really, really insane.
And actually, none of the victims really knew about this or understand what he had done.
What about that, Jim
until
Bob?
we went and told him.
As a parent, did you feel guilty when you learned that his behavior had continued and other girls in the house had become victims?
Yes. I think as parents, you feel like a failure when one of your kids does something wrong. You feel like if I had done more training or maybe something else, that this wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that kids will make their own choices, and they will make their own decisions, even though you've taught them what's right and wrong.
I'm asking you more as the father of your girls than as the father of Josh. It must have been very hard to look at your little one and know that the behavior had been ongoing, as difficult as your position was.
Right. I was so thankful, though, that
You know, like I said, Megyn Kelly, she's a bitch and a little bit of a cunt, but that's how you interview, babe. That's how you interview. Like she said, oh, we heard about Josh. What about the victims? We heard Josh is really sorry. We heard Josh is out the house. What about the victims in here?
So thankful though that Josh came and told us, and our girls, even though this was a very bad situation, as we've talked to other families who've had other things happen.
Because apparently this was just a thing, an IVLP.
A lot of their stories were even worse.
And just to clarify, it was 4 daughters and there was a babysitter.
Yes.
Y'all heard that? You're saying people who had worse stuff happen in their families, and where are their police reports? Did they report it? So they didn't go to the police either, because when you talk to them, they didn't give you the advice to take this nigga to the police. So let's get to the bottom of it. Arkansas needs to drop new charges at this point.
It was more like just a
fondling
touch while they were asleep, and for most of them. And there was 2 other incidents that were when they were awake, and it was just a bad thing. And it was something that we would like to forget.
Man of God, man of faith. I guess we can all be grateful that thou shalt not lie is not one of the 10 commandments. Let's keep the lies going.
And we felt like the last step was to make things right with the law, because he had broken the law. And so we took him down to the local police station, actually the closest one to our house, and it was Arkansas State Police headquarters, and walked in and talked to a man there and told him...
Let me stop you there.
Yes.
Well, what was that like? I mean, how do you make the decision as a parent to bring your child to law enforcement and turn him over?
Oh yeah, so that basically Jim Bob is about to say, well, the police covered it up. What could I do? Blame, deflect, blame.
Important step for Josh to confess to the police what he had done because he had broken the law. And we felt like if we didn't do this, that this would be something hanging over his head the rest of his life.
But was it terrifying?
It was very terrifying.
What was that like? Were you worried, Michelle, that he wasn't going to emerge out of that law enforcement
facility? We didn't know if they were going to arrest him at that point or what they were going to do, if this was going to open up an investigation for our whole family, or what was going to happen.
And now we were waiting to hear, were they going to come start the warrant, come take him away? We didn't know what they were going to do.
We went into the Arkansas State Police and...
At police headquarters?
At the police headquarters, walked in, this man was there. We went in and talked to him and said, hey, my son has something that he needs to share with you. And we actually took a witness with us. We went in and sat down, and he shared everything.
He told it all?
He told everything. And we had no idea that what that officer was going through on his own.
So the audience knows that officer is now in jail for 56 years for child pornography charges.
Didn't know anything about this guy besides that he was an officer there at the headquarters.
And now from prison now where he's serving for child pornography, he says, well, he only told me about one incident, and that's why he didn't pursue charges.
I was questioning why in the world would he say that? Maybe he could get out on parole or something sooner, because he actually violated the law in this case himself by not reporting it.
The bottom line is you went to a law enforcement official, you reported it. Josh told him what you say, he told him everything.
Everything.
5 victims.
In fact, we took a friend with us to...
It's almost like sometimes the police get it wrong, and that maybe we shouldn't glorify them as these supernatural heroes who don't make errors.
Because we wanted to make sure that we had a witness that would that would verify that we had shared everything.
I know you've said that he gave Josh a stern lecture.
He did. What he did. I didn't know what he was going to do.
Fear of God in Josh.
Yes.
And
did he warn him that the law could come after him?
He said, and if you continue down this path, you're going to destroy your life and you could end up in prison.
When that was over.
He better go to jail. He better go to jail. If he doesn't go to jail, I'm going to be really upset. He better go to prison. I'm so sorry, God. I know I'm thinking of his... I know he's got a family.
And you think it's over, I assume. You thought...
We didn't know. I mean, a few weeks went by, a few months went by, and...
You're waiting, and when the
Yes.
doorbell's ringing...
I'm like, it wasn't suspicious to y'all? Like, I mean, I guess, hey, human nature. If I have a warrant out, I probably, like, wouldn't call up the police, like, hey, do you guys have a warrant for me? I just want to make sure in case I need to show up somewhere. Like,
Doorbell's ringing, you're wondering whether someone's there to arrest him?
And then later, there was somebody that called the hotline and said that the Duggars had reported this before, but...
That's right. Well, we're going to get to that. Did you feel, when Josh had been through all of this, he had gone to the Christian-based treatment program, he had gone through counseling, he had gone to the police, and he emerged back into the home. Did you feel that he was a threat still, or did you feel
not at all.
That he could be trusted at that point?
Not at all.
Did you ever worry that the treatment didn't work, especially with so many young children in the house?
No. Josh was a changed person.
I wrote about that in my journal a couple of times. My rebelliousness was something I need to pray for. My thought life. And I need to pray for the new school year, especially for the Duggar family, especially Josh during his trip to Little Rock with Jim Holt. And I'm saying Jim Holt in his name because he was a politician, and I don't think it's a secret that Josh was campaigning with him. Mm-hmm. The Holts and the Duggars were very close friends. And Josh was, I think, pretty involved as like a 15, 16-year-old here. Well, he may have been, if I was 15, he may have been 17 here. But he was pretty involved in that campaign. Like, this was probably, honestly, right after my very first meeting with the Duggar family. I had just found out, I think, at this time, that Josh had been looking at porn, somehow involved in the Jim Holt campaign. People talk about it online as the sin in the camp thing. And, Josh was basically brought in front of the church, and it was a huge deal. They were just getting ready to move. They were literally like packing boxes and stuff like that. And Jim had lost his race that he was doing. I think it was for U.S. Senate against Blanche Lincoln, I believe, was the Democrat running. And he was the Republican nominee. I think he made it all the way to the general, and he lost. And he was soul searching and trying to figure out why he had lost this campaign. And I don't know how Josh was found out. I think it was one of the kids that was around Josh when he was on the road with the campaign. One of the family children maybe came across him and like said something very innocent sounding to their mom, like, Joshy, which is what they called him, which I hated. Joshy was looking at, like naked pictures or people's nakedness or things like that, is kind of what I heard. And that became huge. And I think Jim, probably this is an ego thing, if I had to guess, probably was grappling with why he lost and couldn't accept the fact that it was him and his message, which was extreme. Like he makes like the craziest of the crazy right-wing politicians today look kind of nuts with some of the stuff that he believed, honestly. And I'm not afraid of saying that. Like it's true. Like I make no bones about it. Like there are things about Jim that I liked that, like there were moments that we had, because I ended up doing some stuff for him too, that were very nice on a personal level, but belief-wise, yeah, nuts. It was bad. And he clearly lost the race because he was just not, a good candidate. But I think he found out about this and kind of did some two and two together kind of stuff in his head. And, there were some Old Testament stories about the Israelites, I believe, failing in some of their battles because there was sin in the camp. There was stuff going on in their literal war camp that they attributed this to. And then once they rooted it out and took care of it, they could be blessed. And God was going to give them the good stuff. And so Jim Holt's like racking his head. He finds out that Josh is looking at porn and puts 2 and 2 together. And it's like, well, look at this. Josh looking at porn. This was told to the church body that I was sitting in. I'd never seen anything like this before because I went to normal churches previously. I'd never seen somebody stand up and be like, Josh is being punished for the sin of this, and he shall now confess to the people in front of you, and like all this stuff. It was like crazy to me. Never seen anything like it. But Josh was basically, there was a man who was in the church who I guess had also done some quote unquote stuff, maybe porn related, maybe he was a self-identified porn addict. And they arranged for Josh to basically go to his property, which was out in the sticks, and have him dig out a pond. In my journal about what I wanted to be to my family and like reaffirming my commitments, because I was seeing this guy that was really kind of freaking me out. And he, like, it was the kind of thing where he came back and it was like, we hadn't seen him in weeks. We've been hearing about all his shit every day. Like the Duggar girls, bless their hearts, were crying every time there was a Josh update, just sobbing. You know, Michelle crying, Jim Bob, you know, he's just Jim Bob. But, you know, it was really emotional. And then Josh comes back for like a visit and he's like, hey guys, what's up? Kind of like, you know, real like chill. And it was like, what?
Yeah.
I
was like, what? Like, dude.
And we did, and we still had those safeguards in place. I mean, it's like, there were a lot of things that.
Like, you put safeguards up in the first time something happened, and then it kept happening anyway. But I'm going to take your word when you say that there were a lot of, you know, new stuff. Things were different. They had moved into the big house.
Changed in our understanding as parents with, you know, this first child, first son, you know, to come to this place in his life. We're like, there's things that we've learned even since then that I think.
What do you mean by that? Like, and first of all, as a parent, you should always be learning and growing things because all of your kids are different. You have 19 of them.
You know what? We don't let boys babysit. We don't let, you know, they don't play hide and seek together. Two don't go off and hide. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we put in place, and we said, you know, you're not alone in a room with someone else. You always be out visible, and you know, little ones don't sit on big boys' laps or people that you don't know, or even family members, you know, unless it's your daddy, you know. And so there's boundaries that we've learned.
Well, one of the big questions this week, what would make you launch a reality TV show about your family, given this past? Okay, so it's all behind you for all intents and purposes. And then in 2008, you launched a reality TV show. What would make you launch a reality TV show about your family, given this past?
You know, back early on, it was after all this was taken care of in 2002, 2003, we actually had a magazine that came to Michelle and said, hey, can we do a story about your family? And we said, yes, that would be fine.
But are you thinking?
And it was at that fucking point that they shouldn't have done anything. Like, oh, at that point we were thinking you had all of this going on in your family and still did it. Like, again, I don't care how badly you feel like you wanted to share your ministry. You chose religion over your kids and then sold the entire world that the kids were the most precious and biggest blessing from God in your life.
And wait, this might not be a good idea, because when you bring cameras into your home, they tend to discover things and people get more interested in you.
We had nothing to hide. We had taken care of all that years before. And when they asked us to do the reality TV show, all this had been taken care of 5 years before. And we had a clean bill of health from the state. We had said you've gone through counseling. You had told the police.
Did any of the girls, or did Josh say, "Whoa, hold on, Mom and Dad, hold on"?
We had no fear because everything was taken care of, and that was a suit. That was actually a sealed juvenile record, and they had told us that all this stuff was done as a juvenile. This was all stuff that was sealed, and this is stuff that under law, there's no way that this could ever be brought out.
Did you live in fear that it might come out?
I don't know that we lived in fear because we'd all resolved it. It had been forgiven. We moved on with life.
When you heard that in late May, that the story had broken, that you hadn't been given a heads up by any of the official police involved, that they were going to do this, what was your reaction?
I said, God, I know that there's a lot of families out there that are hurting. And you know what? This isn't something we wanted to come out. But if people can see that Josh, who did these very bad things when he was a young person, that God could forgive him for these terrible things, then I hope other people realize that.
See, when God on earth is your father, I guess we should be grateful that Jim Bob forgave Josh.
God can forgive them and also make them a new creature.
Was there any motivation that you know of for this police chief to want to hurt your family?
I'm really not for sure.
There must be an agenda.
I'm not sure if there was a bribe or if there was some kind of personal agenda or something.
It definitely wasn't to be caring about the victims.
Had you had any prior dealings with her?
I think Josh had talked to her one day at a meeting, and he said hi to her and stuck out his hand, and she turned and wouldn't talk to him. She was getting ready to retire, and just even a few weeks ago she said, I'm getting ready to retire, and there's a few things I want to do before I retire.
You think you were on the list?
I think I was on the list.
Any chance of you suing her or the city for this disclosure?
We're talking to some attorneys about that right now, and we'll see. But I think the big picture is protecting juveniles' records. And I think that's something that we want to be an advocate for, protecting juvenile records, because the mistakes that juveniles make when they're young should be sealed.
How is this? There's been so much focus on your son.
They never said this about any victim that was shot by the police and unarmed. They didn't say this about Trayvon. It's interesting who gets to be a juvenile, who gets to be a child, who isn't a criminal, whose record gets to be sealed, who nobody hunts down in the street and kills. You touched your 5-year-old little sister. You're a disgusting piece of shit.
How has this affected your daughters, the release of this information?
I think our daughters have, they were shocked to hear this. It's something that crushed them at first. But
they did not want this out publicly.
No, they didn't want this out, and no victim wants their record or their minor story to be told. Every victim should have the right to tell their own story, not a tabloid.
The main charge we've heard from your critics has been they are hypocrites. They preached family values. Josh once said, we are the epitome of conservative values, and yet they had this secret, and they weren't honest with the world about who they were.
I don't think you go up to total strangers and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I want you to know what I did as a child, and just share everything about your past. Every family has things happen.
Actually, they make sexual predators in most places put themselves on a registry. It's something that you can see like in their background checks on purpose, so that we can avoid situations in the future, so that yes, everywhere you go, that's announced to people.
Things happen in the family.
As the very first thing.
And some
do not get a job. Do not support and build a family. Go straight to jail.
Michelle, let me ask you, because you were in the news for making a robocall that suggested transgender people might want to go into the bathrooms of girls, locker rooms of girls, and that they may be child molesters. Folks have used that.
Again, that's true. Like, girl, you could have said any other words to describe these trans people. You could have just flat out said, like, "Oh, a man could go in there and be a rapist." But you chose the language to use child molester, which Miss Megyn says, because, yeah, it's kind of weird knowing what your child did.
Week against you, saying, how could you unfairly, in their view, compare transgendered people to child molesters, suggest they are child molesters, knowing what you know about Josh?
I think that protecting young girls and not allowing young men and men in general to go into a girls' locker room is just common sense.
But this is different.
Don't you love that? I love when conservatives try and tell you that something is just common sense. I see everything in black and white, and I think this is black and white. Your adult son shouldn't be let alone into bathrooms with little girls. Him specifically. He didn't even have to cut off his dick for that to happen.
Because you injected child molestation into it.
I think you actually said pedophile in that, and actually a pedophile is an adult that
Mind
preys
you,
on children.
nobody said pedophile, bro. Unless they cut that out. Unless Fox cut that out. So why did you hear it, Jim Bob? What do you know?
That preys on.
That we don't know. I guess we're going to see in court.
Joshua was actually 14 and just turned 15 when he did what he did. And I think the legal definition is 16 and up for being an adult preying on a child. So he was a child preying on a child.
You do not.
Iconic bar. It's a child touching a child. Well, what is it now at age 30-fucking-3, Jim Bob? What is it now? What is it now, Jim Bob? As soon as there was a gap at 15 and 5 when your child is at an age where they should be looking at women, when they should be noticing women's bodies.
View Josh as a pedophile?
No.
What I'm asking you is, can you understand the critics' reaction to this news?
I can understand that, but I think I know that every one of us have done things wrong. That's why Jesus came. I feel like this is more about there's an agenda, and there's people that are purposing to try to bring things out and twisting them to hurt and slander.
An agenda. All right, here's my high conspiracy. Why do these scandals keep coming out during Democrat presidencies? What about the Trump administration? What about the Republican Party that's covering this up? No, I'm kidding. It's not funny because it's horrific, so we just have to lie so that we don't have to have uncomfortable dreams tonight.
So were the Duggars targeted?
An agenda. How selfish could you be? How up your own ass could you be to think that the agenda would be this instead of not letting you be duplicitous, not letting you live out in hypocrisy. Stop getting paid and rewarded for this shit, for this lifestyle that clearly is toxic and hurts people. That you shouldn't keep getting rewarded for things that you don't deserve at this point, when you don't need this fucking money. We have to hear from you all the damn time how you don't need the money, how you're self-sufficient, blah, 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 you're self-made, pulled yourself up from the bootstraps and fed 20 fucking kids. So, but there's an agenda.
Were the Duggars targeted by the tabloids because of their Christian beliefs?
Yeah, because people hate God and Jesus that much, that they would go and want to report about your pedophile son. That's why. It's out of a hatred for Christ. Not you. Not you and your personhood for allowing this. Not you and your parenting. Not you and your blanket training. Not you and your values. But it's because of Jesus Christ. Him specifically, not even related. It's Christ. What a wild, bold thing to say. What a bold thing to say. When in doubt, claim persecution. Is that not the white Christian way?
You think?
Like, as if any other reality TV family got on television and had a pedophile amongst their midst and hid it, and it was a show based about their family, and the abuse that went on was in their family, and they had no Christian values. You're trying to tell me that you feel so special, so God cursed, so God damned, that's why people would only be mad at your family, that they would not be mad at our imaginary, fictionary, non-Christian family. I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. So when we're talking about white ethno... I'm just kidding. But like, just imagine centering yourself this much. Like you and your particular Christ, that there would be so much hatred for that this thing, which is so minuscule, can't possibly be just the reason why that they are bringing it up. That as if your son isn't down in D.C. espousing values, as if your son isn't going to come out a couple of weeks as a cheater, as if your son, they said, let me blame this on Jesus. He died for my sins. I'm going to need him to die for Josh right now again.
I think as people on the outside think, well, Christians are supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to say you're supposed to live this perfect life. No, you know what? All of us as Christians, we struggle every day.
What happens to the Duggars from here?
I don't know if the rest of our family should be punished for the act of one of our children, that something that happened 12 years.
I don't know if our family should be punished for the act of one of our... Punished how? Because you're not on television anymore? Why is that such a big punishment? You don't need the money, right? Or do you? Is it you guys really need it? Because the whole premise before this was that you were eating fine. You were working fine. Well, the next couple daughters aren't going to have weddings just as nice. You're in your bag. At this point, this show had like 10 fucking seasons. Like it had been aired for 7 years. You need more money? That's longer than most like shows are in. Most shows stop at 4 seasons. Is what I'm trying to say. Like, but you're trying to tell me, Jim Bob, that the whole family shouldn't be punished for Josh. Why do they need to be on television?
Years ago, we're not. But, we are fine whether they
like
film
he'd
us
even
or
say
not.
like
We're going to go on and live life.
he'd even make it seem like, what's it called? Why should the fans be punished for Josh's mistake? Like, we'll keep putting out the content. No, he said my family. Why should they get punished for that? Actually,
If we're going to go on and serve God and make a difference in the world.
Children and enjoy our grandchildren and continue on with life. Either way, we're at peace.
Do you think the show will be canceled? Has TLC given you any indication?
At this point, our family is just trying to regroup from these attacks. And when you're in every newspaper and everything throughout the world, I mean, it's been an unprecedented attack on our family. And it was actually, this information was released illegally. And so I wonder why all this press is not going after the system for releasing these juvenile records. That is a huge story. Now, what our son did 12 years ago is I'm sure it's a major story to them too, but yet hopefully justice will be served on the ones that release juvenile records to protect other juveniles from their records being released.
It must have been terrible. I mean, I'm sure you're going through hell right now.
I think what's so devastating.
God, if this could happen to us rich white people who are famous, imagine the consequences and effect for poor people if their records were to get out. Thanks, Jim Bob, for your compassion. I appreciate that. Thanks, Jim Bob, for your empathy, for your sympathy.
Stating as a mama for me is we took our children to the safety center, the Children's Safety Center. We trusted them. We trusted the police department. Our children poured out their hearts. They shared everything. And then to have their trust betrayed and for all of their information and everything they'd shared to be turned over to a tabloid, for those things to be twisted and shared in a slanderous way, story after story, tabloid after tabloid. As a mom, that breaks my heart for my...
And what's done in the dark is always going to come to light, in which had you just told the truth From the beginning, had you been forthcoming, had you had lived in your filth when it happened, we wouldn't have to be listening to you sob about the secrets of your children being released. If you had laid your shit out to bare from the beginning, people would have decided how badly they thought it stunk, and if they wanted to keep watching your shit.
Girls, because I think this is such a horrible, they've been victimized more by what has happened in these last couple of weeks than they were 12 years ago, because they didn't even understand or know that anything had happened until after the fact when they were told about it. And
I wanted to put the count in of how many times they said that the kids didn't know, to really emphasize how manipulative they're being, right? How they're telling a half-truth. The kids didn't know because Michelle and Jim Bob didn't tell them the full truth of what Josh did. Period. Full stop. When your kids trusted you, and to now as adults have to realize and live with how you betrayed their trust, how you relied on their unconditional love for you to be able to manipulate them, for you to be able to say that I'm working in the best interest of my child. This is what the best thing that we knew how. If it is, fine, but admit that you didn't tell them the full truth when you knew it. Admit that you didn't tell them that stuff happened. So either you're telling the truth or you're not telling the truth, that this was traumatic for them. So which one was it? That it was difficult for them, that they went through a lot of therapy. Why did they go through all that therapy then if they didn't know what happened? If they didn't know. Why were they crying so much all the time? Was it because of Josh's sin? They felt bad? That's interesting. As a mom, your heart hurts. I get it.
so I think we haven't, in our hearts before God, we haven't been keeping secrets. We have been protecting those that honestly should be protected. And now what's happened is they've been victimized by people with an agenda and for whatever profit they think they're going to get. But in this, one thing I know is that God is going to use all of this for good. Okay.
Jim, Bob, Michelle, thank you both so much. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you for telling our story.
Before we go, a word about our children. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 20 boys is a victim of child sexual abuse in this country. 3 out of 4 adolescents who have been sexually abused were victimized by someone they knew well. So what are the odds that someone like Josh Duggar will offend again? Researchers say most young offenders are male and between the ages of 12 and 14. According to a 2009 DOJ analysis, long-term studies have shown that some 85 to 90% of them never are arrested for sex crimes again. If you know a victim in need of help, please.
Now, Joshua, look at you beating the fucking odds, bro. Look at you. 85 to 90% do not get arrested for crimes again. Thanks for watching. Bye.
It's like you niggas gotta stop acting weird. You niggas gotta stop acting weird. You niggas gotta